I started flying in 2006. And like Clayton said, I think for Cape Town pilots, flying Lions Head is definitely one of the most iconic or places to fly with what we've got here. And in this presentation, I'm just going to briefly go through all the types of conditions that I think it's possible to fly in. Over the years, I started doing tandems in 2009. So I did have a look at my logbook, and it looks like somewhere about 5,500 flights from Lions Head before we started flying Signal Hill. So in those 5,500 flights, I learned quite a lot about the weather and about what's going on. I'm not saying that everything I'm going to say here is gospel. We are actually, in fact, still learning about Lions Head and still learning about the weather and what's going on here, because it's such a sensitive site. But I can give you the guidelines, what to look for to fly safely from Lions Head. Okay, so we're going to start with the basics. It's just Lions Head is obviously mountain in Cape Town. It's 669 meters high. And it's inside Table Mountain National Park, which means if you want to fly Lions Head, you need to be a member of the Glen Club, and you need to have a level 2 or level 4 safety activity card, Table Mountain National activity card, to be able to fly here and land at the Glen. We have 2 takeoff sites. We've got the upper launch site and we've got the lower one. The upper one we don't use that much anymore. The upper one we found is quite a difficult launch site to launch from, and when you go to the top launch, it's often not soarable, so it's best to wait at the bottom for the wind to pick up before you can actually start getting up. Okay, so when to fly Lions Head? Lions Head obviously faces southwest, so the best wind to fly in is a southwesterly. We can fly it in a south-southwest as well, a south, which a lot of people think that we can't fly in, but I'll get to the southerly wind later. I'll explain to you what happens in the southerly wind, but we can fly it in a southerly, and then also a southeast wind shadow. We can also fly it in a westerly wind, but I don't advise it. It is known to cause incidents, and if you don't know what you're doing, rather stay away from a westerly wind, especially if the talker on Signal Hill is showing any signs of westerly winds. Okay, as the tandem, I don't know, you're probably not going to be able to read all these things, but I just wanted to quickly show you. We've got a tandem committee called the CTA that we've formed to basically do a risk assessment on all our sites we fly. And this is a risk assessment we did a little while ago, just to get some guidance for the tandem pilots as well, to see when we need to fly and when we're not supposed to fly. So this area over here just shows that the takeoff site. You've got the red zone, the green zone, and the yellow zone. Obviously southwest is your best wind, and then all the way up to west, and then we can fly it in a southeasterly as well, but you obviously can't take off in the southeasterly wind. So with the southwesterly wind, we looked at the green zone, and we've got the wind meter on the top launch takeoff site, where we don't want wind speeds of greater than 52 kilometers. That's where we said that's the cutoff point. The reason why we have that, was there a question? Yes?
You said 52 kilometers, but where is the wind talker?
Yes, that's where what I was supposed to get to now. So the reason why we say 52 kilometers, the wind talker is located somewhere here on the launch site on the top. So it's in the Venturi, which means the wind accelerates around the mountain. Obviously, Lions Head, the shape, if you look at it, the shape of it's quite a sharp peak. There's a big Venturi effect on the sides. And we found that 52 kilometers is actually like the sweet spot. The other day, we actually flew in winds that were stronger than that. But it also depends on the air density or the altitude air density on the day as well. The sweet spot is 52 kilometers per hour. So if you see 52 and below, safe to fly. If you see anything higher than that, rather wait and check if any other pilots are flying, and consult with the tandem pilots. Okay, this is our landing area. There's a risk assessment for the wind direction on the landing area. Anything from the west to southwest, even northwest, is relatively safe. I think we've got a new wind meter now at the bottom. The one that was stolen was replaced by John Henderson. So yeah, so we'll post a link on where to get that information. In a southwesterly, generally the winds sometimes, if it's light, it's generally quite like south or even a little bit southeast. When you start seeing southeasterly winds above 10 kilometers per hour, you need to start thinking about if it's actually southerly wind that you're flying in or southwesterly wind. I'll get to that in a moment. And then obviously we don't want to be flying when there's tailwind on the landing field. So it could be perfectly flyable, or you could be walking up Lion's Head and you get to the takeoff site, there's wind coming up the front, and you look at the wind meter at the bottom, there's no white caps or anything, but it's showing you like 10 kilometer east wind. Definite no-go, definite no-go. So I'll explain to you the wind shadow just now, and then you'll understand why I say it's a no-go. Okay, so here you can see the shape of Lion's Head. It's clearly a shape of a V. The top takeoff is over there, bottom takeoff over there. These two red circles are the danger zones. Okay, so when it's a typical southwesterly day, you're going to be taking off from the bottom takeoff. And one thing I always hear Barry say to his students or new pilots that have never flown here is when you get to the rock, you start turning. The reason why you do that is the wind's blowing southwesterly, it curls around here, it accelerates, and when you start flying from the bottom and you get to past the rock, when you get to the rock, you're going to start turning to your left then. And what happens is because the wind's quite strong and it's accelerating there, your left-hand turn going back into wind is going to take you so much longer to actually make that turn. So you're probably going to end up turning into wind over here, and you don't want to be past the second set of rocks in a strong Venturi effect. Once you've actually established that you can turn here and you've got enough forward speed to go forward, you can gradually go closer and closer and closer to the sides of the mountain to get yourself up on the edges, because that's the place that works the best. But if it's a strong soarable day, you don't even have to go further than these rocks. Okay. This is the bottom launch. Okay. Obviously, you can see that a lot of trees have been taken out from pilots, ending up in the trees. I just wanted to quickly show you guys. I've actually written an article also on how to launch in the bottom takeoff site. The wind generally, even if it's southwest or west or south, it always comes from the right. And what happens is when you pull your glider up straight, the glider's going to come up straight, but because the wind's from the side, it's going to push you to the side and you're going to end up in these trees. So what you want to do is when you pull up the wing, you want the left side of the wing to come up first, to face into wind, so that when you turn into wind, the glider can't turn. So pull it up, left side first, into wind. There's no way you're going to go into the bushes. There's absolutely no way unless you pull your right-hand brake. Okay. Next, the wind shadow. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the wind shadow. That's the southeasterly wind that comes from the ocean on the back. What we need for a wind shadow to form is, generally speaking, a warm temperature day, like between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. We need the southeasterly to be quite shallow, which means we've got an inversion that's lower than 1,000 meters. And what that means is generally the southeasterly is a low level wind with an inversion that's on top of it. And then we've got a northerly or sometimes even a northwesterly wind that's on top of it. So if the southeaster, if it's post frontal, the southeaster is quite deep. Then as it deteriorates, the inversion starts setting in and it starts pushing the southeaster down, and we've got a low level southeasterly wind, which means the southeaster can't creep over the mountain, and instead it goes around, and then you see the yellow area over here. You've got a calm area over here, and you've got southeasterly coming round that side and coming down Carbonkelberg. Okay, sorry, this slide's not supposed to be here. Okay, this is the airflow from Hout Bay in a southerly wind. So you've got general airflow from the south heading that way, and then what happens is the wind curls around the mountain and it starts flowing down the mountain towards Lion's Head. Just want to quickly see where that slide is. There's one missing. Okay. On the south, southerly wind, as I just explained, that comes from Hout Bay. Often we feel that we are flying in a southwesterly wind, but it's actually a southerly wind. And what happens is that southerly wind comes right around and it blows straight up onto Lion's Head, and it follows through over here on the back of Table Mountain, and it actually goes to the right and to the left. And sometimes if it's strong enough, it comes down the mountain and starts spilling down. But you often have southerly wind that blows up on the gully and then down towards the landing. What then happens is you've got a southerly convergence that sets up right over there over the landing, but the wind on the Camps Bay side feels like it's a southwesterly, which often can be soarable and nice, but you can experience convergence as you approach the landing area from this air that starts flowing down. And that's how you know you're actually flying in a southerly. The next slide, I'll show you what happens with the southerly. It starts blowing up this side, and the same thing happens with the westerly as actually with the airflow. The reason why I didn't put arrows here is because it's just the opposite way. The spine runs down towards Lamed, or the Glen actually, and the southerly blows up here and then it blows cross onto the mountain, and often this area you don't find any lift. So when you take off from the bottom launch and you find yourself going to past the rocks trying to get up here and it's just sinky and flushy, you'll know that it's actually the southerly and it's not southwesterly, even though it looks like it's southwesterly and it reads southwesterly on the talker. The thing to do then is to actually fly back till you get to past the spine and be on the opposite side of the spine and see if you can work your way up here. If you can't get up there, then the best thing is to just slide all the way down the end of the spine till you get to the landing field. The same applies for the westerly wind comes over here, and you'll find that this spine actually is the trigger that kicks lift all the way. If you find yourself, even in a southwesterly, that this area is full of sink, if you try and glide from here to the Glen, you'll find that 9 out of 10 you're probably going to go and land on the beach. So the best thing to do is, it doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do, but is to fly straight towards the spine and just get on the other side of the spine. And the moment you're on the other side of the spine, you'll have support from the southerly wind and you can just slide down to the Glen. Often there can be rotor here. So that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get there on the opposite side of the spine and just slide down there instead of spending your time in the rotary area. I just want to quickly see if I can find that slide that was missing now. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so on the wind shadow, um, obviously the air flowing from the southeast, you've got your wind shadow over here, and it depends on the day as well. It generally stops at the last peak of the apostles, but on some days we even get a wind shadow in the Hart Bay area, and it stretches as far as the other side of Kabonkelberg. Okay. Um, how to identify the wind shadow is it's fairly simple. You'll see quite a clear, definitive line on the ocean that's dark blue in color. And if it's a strong southeasterly day, you'll often see white caps on the other side of the wind shadow as well. So as the wind shadow starts breaking down, you'll start seeing cloud starting to form on Table Mountain. Firstly on Devil's Peak and on the corners of Table Mountain, and then at Judas Peak to the corners of the 12 Apostles, and it sometimes starts flying over Kabonkelberg as well. And you'll see that this line starts coming closer and closer and closer to landing, and suddenly things start getting really good. Like before it starts going really bad, it's really good, if that makes sense. You'll find this amazing climb and you'll be like, wow, I'm going like 700-800 meters up and it's amazing. And suddenly it's like, there's lots of wind at the bottom. What happens is the wind shadow actually starts compressing, and the air that's inside the wind shadow, the still air starts compressing, and it just releases thermals that are really, really nice for flying, but keep an eye on what's happening around you. Okay, so then what happens is the the cloud you'll see starts coming closer and closer and closer to the cable car station, and the southeaster actually splits over here. And the last sort of area to get the southeaster is here, on lines. It actually it sometimes starts flowing over town through on this side and then Bantry Bay area, and then you'll see white horses and white caps all over. If you are in the air at that point in time and you see white horses at Lamed, the best thing you can actually do is if you can land at the Camps Bay High School, which you shouldn't do, but that's one of your options. Or you can land somewhere on the slope. It's actually safer for you to land on the slope than to try and get into this nasty, nasty air. If it's fully covered with cloud and there's white horses, even in Camps Bay, don't go and land at the Glen. You're gonna get trouble. Like it's gonna be super turbulent. Um, we've had incidents in the past with people trying to land. We've even had someone land in the ocean. So try and avoid that at all costs. Okay. Mm. It can it can actually go both ways. Like often the wind increases and it depends on the temperature on the day as well. It compresses and it gets really good. And then um, if the wind dies down, you're not going to have the wind shadow break down. It can open up again. But generally what happens is as the day starts cooling down and the temperature starts dropping, the thermals will die down and the wind shadow will break down. Okay. Um, I think I've already explained the southerly wind. I don't know if you guys have any questions on the wind shadow or on the southwesterly on the. Yes. In a southeasterly. No, the southeast wind shadow is perfect. You can fly like what happened with the tandem pilots is like we used to fly Lion's Head all the time, and we used to fly from the top takeoff, and the top takeoff can be quite intimidating because it's quite steep, and if something goes wrong or your passenger sits down, you're going to take a tumble. But as a new pilot, It's not. I wouldn't say you should not fly in a southeasterly. It's often great to fly in a southeast wind shadow. It's just you have to pay attention to what's happening around you. If you are familiar with when the wind shadow comes in and when to land and when to fly, then it's perfect. You can fly anytime.
So with a southeaster effect, what you will be flying is thermal.
Yeah. So in the southeast wind shadow, you want to look at the spot graph as well and see if it's a thermic day. If it's a non-thermic day, you're probably going to be wasting your time unless it's a really really hot day and the inversion breaks. But yeah, we've flown from Lion's Head and like climbed like 700-800 meters above, like it can be really good. In fact, it's sometimes better flying Lion's Head in a wind shadow than in a southwesterly when it's just soaring. Yeah.
You get like rocked if you climb up in those spaces.
No, so another thing is the southeasterly is not a wind that's going to come over the top. You're not going to thermal up and suddenly get into the southeaster. Okay. The only way you're going to get into the southeaster is if the southeasterly wind is actually coming completely over the mountain and there's no wind shadow. Okay. The southeaster wind shadow is you've got an inversion. You've got ground level, then you've got the strong southeasterly, and as you go, it's actually the opposite of wind gradient. So you've got strong wind at the bottom, and the higher you go, the weaker it gets. And then you've got an inversion layer, and you've got an easterly or a northerly or northwesterly on top. So even if you thermal through the top, or if you get to 1,000 meters on Lion's Head, great. It's going to be fantastic. But if you get a bit of tailwind or easterly wind, just check your ground speed, but you're not gonna be in a position, or in my experience, I've never had it where I've thermaled up and got to the top and it was super turbulent like from the southeasterly. Yes, if the southeaster, if it's breaking down and you're close to the wind shadow deforming, then yes, pay attention to what's happening around you.
So essentially, the southeaster is a low inversion. It's going to break the wind going around the mountains.
Yes.
You can't climb through the top. It's actually been suppressed by and blocked
Yes,
by the mountains.
the southeaster is a low level wind. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a good rule that whenever you see the clouds are forming on Table Mountains and starting to come down, you not to fly?
That's what we used to do. Like we especially at Lion's Head, because it's so close to the wind shadow. It's if you look at the shape of the. Let me just go back. Okay, doesn't want to go back now. But anyway, if you look at the shape of the wind shadow at Lion's Head, we've always looked at the clouds and said, like, if you see the clouds starting to form over Table Mountain, that's your cue to start to go out and go and land. If you look at the wind shadow line and it's coming closer and it's in Camps Bay, then it's definitely time to go and land as it starts falling over the apostles. Yeah. Yes.
You said that the suddenly reads like a southwester sometimes.
Yes.
What would you look at to know that's a true southwester?
So that is a good question. Often what I did in the past is I'd look at the rest of the wind meters that are located in the rest of the Western Cape area, especially like close to Macassar and Muizenberg. If it's a prevailing southerly wind all over the Western Cape, then 9 out of 10 times it's a southerly wind that you're flying in. But all the wind meters on this side of the mountain will tell you that it's a southwesterly, and it's often flyable and it's perfect to fly in. But you'll know when you're in the air that okay, it's actually a little bit south, and just have to be careful on landing approach if there's convergence. Sometimes the convergence can be really nice, and you can actually soar in the convergence for half an hour, whatever. You can float around, but it can get turbulent if that if that southerly turns more southeasterly. Any other questions?
What should you do if you get stuck in the Venturi?
In the Venturi, okay, so we get taught that you should pull big gears and speed bar. I suggest to not do that. I actually have been blown over lines at 3 times, twice on a tandem and once on a solo glider. I'm gonna just try and find that slide quickly. Okay, so the biggest mistake people do is when they take it from the bottom, they go straight to the edges and they get stuck over here and they panic. So firstly, what's the best thing you can do when you get stuck in a Venturi like that? What would you say? What would you think would be a good thing to do? Get as much altitude as possible. Okay, so forget about the big gears. You don't want to go down. Okay, what happens with Lion Z is the wind actually accelerates quite a lot here, and it gets quite turbulent on the sides. So you're going to climb on your speed bar, okay, and you're going to try and push into wind as much as you can, even if you start going backwards a little bit, and start climbing up this area over here. If you can get up, if you see that you're getting blown, then you need to run. Okay, the best thing to do is, but I have been there in 60 k's plus wind while I was training, and then you go and you can push up and until you get to the corner here, and then once you get to enough altitude, you're going to start swing a right and head for the promenade and land at the promenade. This side is a bit more tricky. If you get pinned over here, there aren't many landing options except for the German school, which is on completely on the lee side, and then there's a couple of fields here as well, but it is quite turbulent at times. So I don't think I've heard of many people except for one that have been, most cases that we've had people being blown over on this side of the mountain. So speed bar, face into wind or onto the ridge as much as you can, and try and get as much altitude as you can until you can't go any more forward, and then swing right to the ocean, completely to the ocean as far as you can, to try and avoid the Bantry Bay area, and just run. And the moment you are in, you've got some elevation, you're going to turn into wind, and then check your penetration. See how much forward speed you've got, because if this is Lion Z and I'm going around this way to Bantry Bay, I'm going to go down and I'm going to turn into wind, and then what's going to happen is you need to check your forward speed. If you have forward speed, then great, you can turn around again. Otherwise, you need to reverse it into the promenade. Okay, that's worst case scenario, but you'll be fine. Generally, if the wind is that strong on the sides, it's not blown out on the promenade. Any other questions?
The other side.
Hey?
Did you talk about the other side?
The other side is a problem. Don't go if you have to choose a side. This side, it is shallower, okay, but the same principle applies. If you can get as much altitude as you can to try and run. I've heard of that one case where the guy climbed up here as high as possible, and he turned around and he landed on those fields over there by the yes, that's possible. But this area where there's quite a steep drop off on the western side is quite dangerous, where this one goes into a nice flat neck, but there's more landing options on this side. Even if you run all the way down the promenade and you get to those fields, you can make it if you go downwind. Just check your forward speed.
There might not be many people that have been blown over at that exact Venturi, but there's been quite a few foreign pilots that have gone the line for Table Mountain and they've gone too close to the V and then
Really?
Landed at the top of the V where it's the houses.
So that's the thing.
Just
If you try to go over to the Apostles, then you instead of coming out,
Yeah. So
take a straight line. Are you going to talk about that?
the apostles. Well, going to the apostles. The crossing. Okay, well, I can talk about it if you want me to talk about it. I haven't prepared a slide for it, but if you, we've actually managed to fly from Lions Head, cross the apostles to Komiki, and then back to Lions Head. So in a southwesterly wind. So when you cross Lions Head to Table Mountain, the general thing to do is you need to at least be about 50 meters above the top, which gives you what, 669 plus 50, so that's about 720. And then you don't want to go completely to the left. You always want to do, like you fly in the Alps, you want to do a dog leg. So head into wind for Camps Bay until you're about a couple of 100 meters out, almost halfway to the middle, and then I just want to see if I have a picture of. So you're going to fly from here towards Camps Bay, and if it's southwest, if you see that on Kloof Corner, it's got this sort of triangular shape. So this faces west, and then there's a spine that runs down, the same as this spine. It's kind of like a southerly spine. So what you want to do is when you cross, is you always want to fly first to Camps Bay, and then try come back, and then try and aim for the spine. Never aim for this area because you have the same Venturi effect as you have on Lion's Head over there. You can always, when you aim for there, you can always track back and come back and see if you can get lift there. But the best thing to do is actually to aim for the spine over here and then get up from there. Once you get up on the spine, or once you're on the spine, you can work your way into the gully over here and then work your way up and then go down and face all the southwesterly slopes you can fly into. Yeah.
You said that you went from Lions Head to Komiki and back.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
By flying.
Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, no, so if there's a live connection, I can show you. It was actually me and Anthony Allen a couple of years ago. So
what's special about that day that you could do it?
it was a post-frontal day, and usually what happens is you get to Komiki and you can't come back, because often when we fly from Signal Hill or from Lions Head to Komiki, it's a northwesterly wind or a westerly wind, and you arrive at Komiki and it's just not possible to come back. So what you want ideally is you want a westerly wind, and then as you fly along, when you get to Komiki, you want a southwesterly. So what happens is when you get to Komiki, you hop over to Scarborough, and then from Scarborough you go. There's a little ridge where the location is. You hop onto that location ridge there, and then there's a flat section. Excuse me? Yeah. And then there's a flat section, and there's a little sharp little peak, and that peak triggers a thermal. So if you get that thermal, the rest is easy. If you don't get that thermal, so we were just lucky to get that thermal. You get that thermal, you climb up, then once you've climbed up there, you head on to Noordhoek Peak, into the bowl, and then from the bowl, it's basically downwind. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's.
It's going to go from northwesterly down to southwesterly.
Sorry?
You need a day from northwesterly all the way to southwesterly.
Yeah, we actually flew it in a southwesterly. We flew from Lions Head, we flew into wind to Komiki, and then back. But it's like you spend like 3 hours getting there and an hour coming back. Mm. But ideally, yes, you want like from signal northwest going southwest. But to time it to get it right is it's luck. Yeah, yeah, yes.
Sometimes when I'm flying lines, then you get close to the land. It's a little bit rocky.
Yes.
Also, I've had a collapse there close to the ground. Is there any particular condition that you need to look out for where you can actually predict, okay, it's going to be a little bit turbulent at the bottom?
So what happens is it's that southwesterly that didn't like that. It's the southwesterly that or a southerly that presents itself as a southwesterly. And what happens is that the airflow flows like this onto Lion's Head, and it doesn't have enough energy to go up because it's coming from the back as well, and it's flowing over Table Mountain, and it's flowing around Table Mountain, and I find the air that's over here starts flowing down, and it hits the spine, and the spine of it often gives you nice lift, and then you have convergence over here, and it just depends on the direction of this airflow down here, whether the convergence is turbulent or not turbulent. The the only way you'll know is if you on Lion's Head and you're flying and it's soarable and you can feel that the flat face, the southwesterly face isn't working as nicely as it usually does. So when, let me show you. Come on. So generally, if this part of the mountain works really well, up to here, and this is a little bowl as well, and you reach soaring and you're going to this corner, when you make this turn and you're sinking in that turn, then you know it's southerly. It's always, but if you're making the turn here and you're actually climbing, you're going up, then it's southwesterly. So just be aware when it's southerly that there could potentially be convergence at the bottom. It's not always like that. It just depends on the strength of the southerly and how steep that southerly is coming back from Table Mountain. We've actually tried to do the reason how I know this is I've tried to cross many times in that southerly wind to Table Mountain and try and get up there and then end up like just getting flushed and running down back to the spine. So that's how I know how it feels to run down there. Yeah.
So to check maybe if it is a true southwest, you can maybe check the wind at McQueen and Wilmington.
Yes. So look at the wider scope of things where you look at all the other takeoff sites, all the other wind meter sites. If they show southwesterly winds, then generally it would be a southwesterly wind.
It's also true that sometimes the southwester will start turning suddenly. You see, so that's also sometimes happens. You fly in a southwester and then through the day,
It starts turning more and more south. Yes, you're correct. Yeah. It's not very often that we get a true southwesterly, like that's spot on where it's just like balmy on Lion's Head. So it's often like southwest, even south that we fly in, but it's still nice. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, once you're above the rock, you can sometimes soar up. It just depends on your skill level because it is quite a steep launch site. So if your ground handling is good, you can definitely go up there. One thing that I can mention to you, if the wind is from the left on the bottom takeoff, don't fly. Ever. Even if other people are flying, walk down. It's like every single time, like to the T, like I've looked at every single time that I've taken off when the wind's from the left, it's been horrible. Horrible. So, like, don't do it. Yes. Yes.
Sometimes looks like a very nice wind shadow, but there might still be some backwind on signal hill. So before you fly in the southeasterly wind shadow, just check if there's no southeasterly wind.
Yes.
It's quite important because with the southeasterly wind on signal hill, you might have some of the southeasterly wind flowing over Table Mountain through the gap, and that might cause a lot of turbulence. It's not fun to fly like that. If there's actually any southeasterly wind in the shadow, just be careful of that.
Yes.
So that would depend on how high the inversion is, right? So
Mhm.
if you check what the height of the inversion is,
If you-
it's lower than Table Mountain, then you shouldn't get that.
Then you shouldn't get the, yeah, if you can
They
look
will
at the,
change during the days of.
yeah, if you look at the inversion, the height of the inversion, then you'll see it can change during the day as well. But if you've got an inversion at 800 meters, then generally there's a, and we find that the most accurate thing to look at to know if there's a wind shadow is RASP. So you can look at RASP, but that's a whole topic on its own. Whether there's going to be a wind shadow or not. But generally speaking, inversion layer, low inversion layer. Yeah. Okay.
Do you guys understand the sign-up procedure for Lions Air? Do you understand that?
Tell us.
Because of the complexity of Lions Head, we recommend that there's a sign-up procedure. So you can do a sign-up procedure. So any sports pilot that flies Lions Head a lot can do a sign-up. A sign-up is basically 2 flights off low launch. Okay? That you are being watched and briefed properly. It doesn't have to be with a radio, but somebody needs to be keeping an eye on you and giving you proper information. So it doesn't have to be an instructor. Preferably not a tandem pilot between flights. This is what my pet hates is because they're the most knowledgeable, but if they're in between customers, they can't give you the attention that you require. So there are a lot of people that fly Lions Head very often. You fly Lions Head very often. And draw from the experience of these sports pilots because they get the time to help you and understand what's going on. And it's there for your safety, guys. It's not there to be to restrict you. It's there to make sure you understand the site. And if you understand the site, then it's easy. And this doesn't count as a sign.
So, like you said, so there's a day where it's really flyable. I'm going on a launch site. There will be pilots that can introduce me or can show me.
Yes. If it's a last day to fly at Lions Head, you're the only pilot there.
Okay. So
On a
it's
special
like
site.
Yeah.
And if it's only tandem pilots there, then also sort of question yourself. Because obviously you're dealing with people that have been flying for thousands and thousands of flights, and maybe their skill level and knowledge is different to yours. But I know it became less popular, I would say, in the last 5 years, it's become less popular, but in the last year, it's become very popular again. Because we've had an influx of new pilots. So you will definitely find the person there, ask who the senior person on the launch is, and ask for a briefing. It's not something we're trying to put a ball and chain on you guys. Think of it that way. It's not trying to restrict you. If you find a person that flies a lot and they're willing to give you a briefing, we don't have an issue. But I think Stephan has given us amazing information here, and this is the most important things we need to understand when flying Lions.
I just want to ask you, you've spoken a lot about the mountain, landing on the site in Frontier and maybe on the beach.
You can I think it's in November and December, you're not allowed to land on the beach. But if you are actually flying in, or if you're experiencing that southerly convergence and you are going up, and you're worried about turbulence, you can go and land on the beach. If it's an emergency, you can go and land on the beach. I would, if it's really turbulent and it's convergence and it's like southeasterly as well, I would rather opt to go land on the beach than to land on the grass, because for obvious reasons. But the best thing to do is, if when you're landing here, is just to always come in with speed. Don't slow your glider down and try and squeak into a little spot. Come in with speed. Always speed is your friend.
Always upward. Always upward.
Yeah, yeah.
Very important. You're approaching towards Camps Bay to see what your penetration is like. Never approach from the Clifton side. Yeah. Like Stephan said, rather go more towards the south and then run towards Camps Bay when you come in from there. So you've got plenty of time to turn around and check your penetration on that.
Yeah, so this is the landing field here, and don't land on the bowling greens. It's happened, and don't land in the tennis court. That's happened as well. As Clayton was saying, what you want to do at Lions Head is, especially because we're flying it in soarable winds that are often 20 k's plus, you want to be flying far out over the ocean, and then with the landing field behind you, and then do your S, or do your figure of eights until you see, okay, now I can do my final turn and actually start going back towards the landing area. You don't want to start doing figure of eights on this side of the landing field, and then suddenly you feel, okay, oops, I'm not going to make it into the landing field. Approach on this side, figure of eights, and then slowly come back, and don't do a hook turn and then not make the landing field as well. Like, just figure of eight, and then in. Very simple. There's plenty of landing space over here. Plenty. Okay.
Obviously, for beginners, you don't want to really go out far over the ocean.
You can.
But is there still lift there?
Yeah, no, there's no lift there. The whole reason for you to go out over the ocean is, often what happens is the wind can accelerate on the landing field. It can be a little bit stronger than actually higher up in the air. So you want to get far out as possible, and then come back to the landing field. Nothing's going to happen if you're upwind. If you're over the ocean, nothing's going to happen over the ocean and the landing field is behind you. It's a simple turn downwind and you're back at where the landing field is. If you're worried about being in the middle of the ocean, then fly towards Camps Bay, over the beach, okay, and then come back to the landing field. You don't have to be in the middle of the ocean if you're not comfortable with that. But you will probably arrive with, if you've flown if you soared to the top and you're flying out, you'll probably arrive with 500 meters above the ocean. So there will be plenty of time for you to S off and land at the landing field.
When you say land at the beach, do you mean Camps Bay or Clifton Fort?
No, Camps Bay, definitely. You don't want to be landing here because it's rotary as well. If you do get stuck here, you can make a long hook turn and then go land there, but it's not advised to go there because it is quite turbulent. You want to be as far to that side of the beach, because it drops down quite steep on that side, and it's turbulent. Okay.
And then the big landing area down here, what else is it used for?
They used to use it for soccer and like.
It's the school up there.
Yeah, it's a school, but I haven't actually seen them play soccer since they put up the smaller nets. I know, and they played cricket as well. It's going to be open. Yes, I wouldn't say it's exclusively for paragliding, but no one's really using it much anymore. The only time you will not be able to land there is if the bungalow has got a party or something where they're using but then there'll be an email that goes out to tell the members that
There will be something happening in
that there's something happening.
In April, there will be a big festival.
Yeah, like a
That
festival.
day,
Yeah,
and that day we will not be able to land.
yeah, yeah.
You land at the beach, you was there in the safest place. So if you suddenly come over the Glen, all of a sudden there's 1,000 people on there, then obviously you're going to make a good decision. And I will land at High School, which is the emergency landing or on the beach.
Yeah.
And then maybe just a logistical question. Is it safer to park a vehicle down here and take an Uber up?
Yes.
There's probably less stress for finding a parking.
The other way around.
No, it's because up there the parking is prone to breaking, and also the trees are not very stable there, as it has been shown.
Another thing that you also got to think about is that launching from Lion's Head, it's quite challenging. It's not like launching from Hawaiians. Okay? So we need to get our ground handling skills in tune with that as well. Because we all land in the bush sometime or the other, but it's there's a silver tree there. I mean, I was in the silver tree, and it takes like 3 hours to get out of the silver tree. So you must just think about these things. You know, it's like Solari's pass. It demands more skill to launch on these things.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one suggestion on that. If you look at where the glider is, where does it land? It always lands on the right hand side.
Yeah.
If you're standing underneath, it sort of looks like a V. If you're standing looking at your glider, you take at least one step
Yeah.
to your left.
If you look at where the position is here, it's not in the middle. You don't want to be standing in the middle of the takeoff site. You want your glider in the middle of the top, but then you want to take a few steps to your left if you're doing a reverse launch, and then make sure that your left side of your wing comes up first. Because if it comes up first, there's no way it's going to go into the bushes. It can just go. If it goes into wind, it's going to stop. If the right side comes up, you've got airflow on this side, and you're going to go into the bushes. That's what's going to happen. Always try and get your left side, and the opposite for the top takeoff. The top takeoff, the wind comes up more southerly, so you want the right-hand side of your wing to come up first. So that side facing into wind and then taking off. So a good thing to do is to actually go and ground handle and do the reverse launch and make sure that you pull up the glider, not straight, but try and pull it up to the side and then stabilize it and then do the opposite side so that you've got both sides nailed. Okay.
Just one other observation about that is when you do take two steps out to the left and then you turn it, you think you're going to be running straight into bushes and whatever. But the glider, as it comes up there, it sort of settles itself.
Yes.
And you sort of slide down. You're running slightly sideways, but straight down the runway. So, relax.
Yeah.
Also got the added pressure now that you've got standard gliders on launch. You know this pressure. So take your time. Nobody's going to rush you. You know, just don't go there like a bull in the china shop the first time and get flustered. You have as much right as anybody else has to do your launch properly in your own amount of time. And you know, the paragliding community in Cape Town is generally very helpful. So if you're struggling with something, you can ask, and nobody should ever be rude to you or deny you from flying off the side of your neighborhood. Any other questions?
Yes.
In the due west or west southwest, I saw on your slide there.
Yeah, so I would not advise flying in a westerly unless you are very experienced at flying Lion's Head. I've actually got a little video on YouTube on how to launch in a westerly, but it's you need to take in the dynamics of what the westerly brings as well, because it comes over the sides. There's areas where it's flashy and it can be turbulent, so you need to avoid those areas. And I would suggest you familiarize yourself with the nice conditions first, like the southwesterly and the southeasterly wind shadow, before you start thinking about the westerly. There are reasons for flying in the westerly, like when it's west, you can get up nicely and cross over to Table Mountain quite easily because you've got a downwind leg to cross over, which makes it nice, but you need to know what you're doing. Okay.
But if you were to do it, would you use top or the bottom table?
It depends on it depends on the wind strength. Like I think Long Pete the other day took off from the top launch in a westerly and he flew over down the Apostles. I haven't taken off on the top launch in a westerly. I've done it from the bottom launch, but then the wind's basically almost coming down the path. So it's a thing of timing the cycle before you're getting flushed down all the way, and then you need to get around. Yeah, it's technical,
I've seen people take off on the road.
which you're not allowed to do.
Which you're not allowed to do, but yeah, I mean, so that makes the absolute direction of the wind.
Basically, it comes back to basics. So the higher you're getting, the more we're going to push forward, right? If we're getting high and we're starting to climb, we're not going to go closer to the mountain, especially when we're soaring. Okay? When we're landing, we're going to come from the upwind position. So we just got to remember these basics when we're flying up.
Yeah. Yes.
If you have to land at Campsite High School, is there anything specific to know about that landing?
No. It's just a.
Land near the trees.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, obviously there's a row of high trees, but there's plenty of space to land, and you're not supposed to land there, but we've never had issues from the school. Yeah.
So we're about to get cut off by ESCOM. Any more questions? Last question? So I'd like to thank Stephan Kruger for his time. I think it was very valuable information. I'm sure you all enjoyed it. We have filmed it. So we'll post it on YouTube for you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Scotty has created a YouTube channel for the Glen Club. And this will be the first video that goes on there. And then all of the other ones that we've recorded, we're going to edit, put them on. We're also feeding for photographs. We want to update the website, and Scotty's going to help us with Instagram as well.
Awesome.
This is our club. This is our local club. So let's join our local clubs because that's the right thing to do. We want to be a community. We want to be safe as a community, and this is where it starts.
Awesome.
We're like a TV license down.
Let's get to big round of